The fluorescent lights of the San Antonio Walmart hummed overhead, casting their sterile glow across endless aisles of products that seemed to mock Lily Catherine Morrison's empty pockets. At 8 years old, she stood frozen in the cereal aisle, her small hands trembling as they searched frantically through the worn pockets of her faded denim jacket for the fourth time. The $20 bill was gone, simply gone. Outside, the Texas sun beat down mercilessly on the asphalt parking lot, creating shimmering waves of heat that distorted the horizon. It was late September, but summer refused to release its grip on the city. Inside the store, the air conditioning provided relief from the heat, but nothing could cool the panic rising in Lily's chest. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Lily, baby, this is all we have until Friday. I need you to be my big girl and get the milk, bread, eggs, and peanut butter. Can you do that for Mama?" Rebecca Morrison had said this while sitting on their threadbare couch, her face pale and drawn from the latest round of chemotherapy. The scarf wrapped around her head hid the hair loss, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Lily had promised. She had held that $20 bill so carefully, folded it twice, and placed it in her front pocket. She had been so careful walking the 4 blocks from their apartment to the Walmart, so careful. Now it was gone. The grocery basket at her feet contained exactly what her mother had asked for: a gallon of milk, a loaf of white bread, a dozen eggs, and the store-brand peanut butter. Lily had even found the items on sale, proud that she might have $1 or $2 left over. But none of that mattered now. Tears began to stream down her cheeks, silent at first, then accompanied by small, hitching sobs that she tried desperately to suppress. Other shoppers passed by, most not noticing the small girl crying in the cereal aisle, others glancing away uncomfortably. Lily pressed herself against the shelves, trying to make herself invisible, trying to disappear into the colorful boxes of Cheerios and Frosted Flakes. "Please, please, please," she whispered to herself, checking her pockets one more time. "Please be there." But the pocket remained empty. 3 aisles over, Daniel Fletcher stood in his manager's office, staring at the computer screen with a headache pounding behind his eyes. The regional director's email was clear: cut costs by 15% within the next quarter, which meant layoffs. Real people with real families who depended on their paychecks. Daniel ran a hand through his graying hair and thought about his own situation, the divorce papers sitting on his kitchen counter, the apartment he'd moved into last month that smelled of mildew and disappointment, the daughter who wouldn't return his calls. His phone buzzed. Another text from his ex-wife Amanda's lawyer. Daniel ignored it and walked out onto the sales floor, needing to escape the suffocating confines of his office. He straightened his tie, a habit from better days, and began his routine walkthrough, checking displays and ensuring his team was maintaining standards. Standards, as if any of this mattered when you were slowly dismantling people's livelihoods. Near the pharmacy section, Patricia Caldwell pushed her cart with deliberate slowness. At 73, she had nowhere else to be and no reason to hurry. Her husband, Robert, had died 18 months ago, and their children lived scattered across the country, too busy with their own lives to visit more than once or twice a year. The Walmart had become her social outlet, her daily destination, a place where she could be around people even if she didn't speak to them. Patty's cart contained the same items it always did: a TV dinner, a small container of milk, bananas that she'd eat alone at her kitchen table while watching game shows. She had stopped cooking real meals after Robert died. What was the point of cooking, for one? As she turned down the cereal aisle, Patty heard the crying. She stopped, her hand tightening on the cart handle. The sound was heartbreaking, the kind of desperate, hopeless crying that came from somewhere deeper than simple childhood disappointment. Following the sound, she spotted the little girl pressed against the shelves, her thin shoulders shaking with sobs. Patty's heart clenched. The girl reminded her of her granddaughter Lucy, who she hadn't seen in over a year. The same dark hair, the same delicate frame. But there was something else. The worn clothes, the way the girl's shoes had holes near the toes, the visible panic in her small body language. "Sweetheart," Patty approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. "Are you all right? Are you lost?" Lily looked up, her face streaked with tears, her eyes red and swollen. She shook her head violently and tried to speak, but the words came out in broken fragments. I lost my mama's money." "Oh, honey." Patty's voice was gentle. "How much money did you lose?" $20, Lily managed between sobs. "It's all we have. Mama's sick and she needs me to buy food and I lost it and I don't know what to do and she's going to be so disappointed and we won't have anything to eat and—" The words tumbled out in a rush and Lily dissolved into fresh tears, her small body folding in on itself as if trying to physically contain the enormity of her failure. Patty felt tears prick her own eyes. She reached out and placed a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "Shh, now. It's going to be all right. Let's figure this out together, okay?" Before Patty could say more, a commotion near the store's entrance drew attention. A small crowd was gathering, and Patty could hear excited whispers rippling through the store. She couldn't make out what was happening, but the energy had shifted. People were pulling out their phones, craning their necks to see something. Lily didn't notice any of it. She was lost in her own private devastation, staring at the grocery basket that she could no longer pay for, thinking about her mother waiting at home, probably trying to rest, but likely worrying about whether Lily had made it to the store safely. Rebecca Morrison had been diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer 7 months ago. The diagnosis had come just 5 months after Lily's father, David Morrison, had walked out on them, declaring he couldn't handle the responsibility anymore. He had left behind debt, broken promises, and a daughter who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. Rebecca had been a dental hygienist, but the cancer had forced her to reduce her hours drastically. The chemotherapy left her weak, nauseous, and unable to work her regular schedule. They'd lost their house and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in a rough neighborhood. Rebecca took the bedroom and tried to make the living room cozy for Lily with blankets and pillows, but no amount of decoration could hide the water stains on the ceiling or the sirens that wailed through the night. To make ends meet, Rebecca had taken a part-time job as a waitress at a diner called Betty's Kitchen, working whenever she had the strength. The tips were meager, but they helped cover the gap between her reduced income and the mounting medical bills. Insurance covered some of the treatment, but the co-pays, medications, and other expenses were crushing them. Lily knew all of this, even though her mother tried to shield her from the worst of it. She heard her mother crying late at night when she thought Lily was asleep. She saw the overdue notices that arrived in the mail. She noticed how her mother pretended not to be hungry so Lily could eat more. And now she had lost $20. $20 that her mother had earned by working a double shift over the weekend, coming home at midnight with aching feet and a forced smile. $20 that was supposed to feed them until Friday. "I'm so stupid," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm so stupid." "No, you're not," Patty said firmly. "You're a little girl who had an accident. That's all. It could happen to anyone." But Lily shook her head. Nothing Patty said could penetrate the wall of guilt and fear that surrounded her. She pulled away from Patty's comforting hand and sank down to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. That's when she felt it, a presence nearby. Someone else had entered the aisle. Lily didn't look up, too consumed by her misery to care who it was. The man who had caused the commotion at the entrance stood a few feet away, taking in the scene with a furrowed brow. George Strait, dressed in his signature simple style, dark jeans, a button-down shirt and a cowboy hat, had only stopped by this Walmart to grab a few items before his sound check for tomorrow night's benefit concert. He'd tried to be discreet, but someone had recognized him, and word had spread quickly through the store. George had spent a lifetime in the spotlight, but he'd never let fame distance him from real people and real problems. Now, looking at this small girl sobbing on the floor, he felt a powerful tug at his heart. He had a daughter and grandchildren of his own. He knew what a child's tears looked like, and he knew the difference between a tantrum and genuine despair. This was despair. He approached slowly, removing his hat in a gesture of respect and humility. Patty looked up at him, recognition dawning on her face, but she said nothing. George knelt down a respectful distance from Lily, his knees protesting the movement. He wasn't as young as he used to be. "Excuse me, young lady." His voice was gentle, warm, with that distinctive Texas drawl that had comforted millions through his music. "I couldn't help but notice you're having a tough time. Is there anything I can do to help?" Lily finally looked up, her tear-stained face registering confusion as she tried to place this stranger. She didn't recognize him. Her mother didn't play much music at home anymore, and when she did, it was usually gospel songs that helped her feel hopeful during treatment. "I lost my money," Lily said simply, her voice hoarse from crying. "I can't buy the food my mama needs." George's expression softened even further. He glanced at Patty, who nodded slightly, confirming the situation. He looked at the grocery basket, such simple items, the bare minimum to survive. "Well, that is a problem," George said thoughtfully. "But you know what? Problems have a way of working themselves out sometimes." "How much money did you lose?" $20, Lily whispered. George reached into his wallet, but before he could pull out any money, Lily spoke again, and what she said next would set everything in motion. "But I can't take money from strangers," she said, her voice suddenly stronger despite her tears. "Mama says we don't take charity. She says we work for what we get. She says accepting handouts makes you forget your dignity." George paused, his hand still in his wallet. He looked at this small, scared girl who was quoting lessons about dignity while sitting on a Walmart floor in clothes that had clearly been worn too long and shoes that needed replacing. He saw in her something that was becoming rare: pride, principle, and strength in the face of devastating circumstances. "Your mama sounds like a wise woman," George said slowly. "A very wise woman indeed." Patty watched the exchange, her hand over her heart. Other shoppers had begun to gather at a respectful distance, drawn by the presence of George Strait, but staying back, sensing something important was happening. Daniel Fletcher had emerged from his office and stood at the end of the aisle, arms crossed, watching. He'd been briefed by a cashier about who was in the store, and while part of him wanted to ask for a photo, another part, the part that was tired of pretending everything was fine, just wanted to see how this would unfold. "Tell you what," George said, an idea forming. "What if we make a trade?" "That wouldn't be charity, would it? That would be commerce." Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand, confused. "A trade? But I don't have anything." George smiled, the kind of smile that had charmed audiences for decades. "Sure you do. You've got something very valuable that I need." "What?" Lily asked, skeptical but curious despite herself. "A smile," George said simply. "I've had a long day, and I could really use a smile. If you give me one genuine smile, the kind that reaches your eyes, I'll pay you $20 for it. That's fair commerce, isn't it? You're providing a service, and I'm compensating you for it." Patty's eyes filled with tears. Several onlookers pulled out their phones, not to record for social media clout, but because they sensed they were witnessing something that needed to be preserved, a moment of pure human kindness. Lily stared at George, processing his offer. For a long moment she said nothing, then, slowly, hesitantly, the corners of her mouth turned up. It was a small smile at first, uncertain, but as George encouraged her with his own warm smile, it grew. It reached her eyes, which were still wet with tears, but now held something else. A glimmer of hope, of relief, of gratitude. "There it is," George said softly. "That's worth at least $20, maybe more." He pulled a $20 bill from his wallet and held it out. Lily hesitated only briefly before taking it, and as she did, something unexpected happened. Instead of simply taking the money and running, Lily stood up, walked over to George Strait, and wrapped her thin arms around his neck in a fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered into his shoulder. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The store had gone silent. The dozens of shoppers who had gathered, the employees who had paused in their work, even the background music seemed to fade away. In that moment, there was only a little girl hugging a stranger who had shown her kindness, and the collective understanding among everyone present that they were witnessing something profound. George hugged her back gently, his own eyes misting over. When Lily finally pulled away, she looked up at him with an expression of such pure gratitude that several onlookers openly wiped tears from their eyes. But Lily wasn't done. What happened next would become the defining moment of the entire encounter, the gesture that would truly silence everyone. Lily looked down at the $20 bill in her hand, then at her basket of groceries. She did some quick mental math, the kind that kids who live with scarcity learn to do instinctively. Then, incredibly, she looked back at George and spoke. "Mister," she said, her voice clearer now, "my groceries only cost about $15. You gave me 20. That means you overpaid me by $5. She carefully folded the bill, held it out toward George and said, "My mama says honesty is the most important thing. She says if someone gives you too much change at the store, you give it back, because that's what good people do. So even though we really, really need the money, I can't keep what isn't fair." The silence deepened. George Strait, who had performed for presidents and royalty, who had received every accolade country music could bestow, stood absolutely still, stunned by the moral strength of this 8-year-old girl. She was offering to give back money she desperately needed because her sense of right and wrong demanded it. Patty Caldwell had to turn away, her shoulders shaking with emotion. Daniel Fletcher felt something crack inside his chest, some hard place that had formed over months of stress and disappointment. An elderly man in the growing crowd removed his glasses to wipe his eyes. A young mother hugged her own daughter a little tighter. George gently pushed Lily's hand back toward her. "No, sweetheart, you keep it all. The smile you gave me was worth every penny, and then some. You and your mama need it more than I do, but I want you to know something." He placed his hand on her shoulder. "What you just did, trying to give that money back, that shows you're already rich in the ways that matter most. Your mama is raising one heck of a daughter." Lily's eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were different tears, tears of relief, of gratitude, of feeling seen and valued. She clutched the $20 bill to her chest and smiled again, this time with her whole face. "Can I tell you something?" Lily asked George. "Of course. My mama really likes your songs. She plays I Cross My Heart sometimes and cries a little. She says it reminds her of when things were better." George felt his throat tighten. "Well, you tell your mama that things are going to get better again. Sometimes we go through storms, but the sun always comes back out eventually. You tell her George Strait said so, all right?" Lily nodded solemnly, as if he'd given her a sacred message to deliver. She picked up her grocery basket, and Patty, who had composed herself, offered to walk with her to the checkout. As they moved toward the front of the store, George stood up, his knees cracking audibly. He noticed the crowd that had formed and gave them a slight nod, acknowledging their presence but not inviting engagement. Most people understood and began to disperse, though many were still wiping tears and whispering to each other about what they'd just witnessed. Daniel Fletcher approached George as Patty and Lily headed to the registers. "Mr. Strait, I'm Daniel Fletcher, the store manager. That was That was something special. Is there anything I can do for you? George studied Daniel for a moment, seeing the exhaustion and stress written clearly on the man's face. Actually, yes. That little girl, Lily, I think her name is. Do you know anything about her situation? Daniel shook his head. No, sir. I've seen her come in a few times, always alone, always buying just a few items, but I didn't know her story. Find out, George said quietly but firmly. Find out what she and her mama need, discreetly, without making them feel like charity cases. There's got to be resources, programs, something that can help them. I'll make some calls, Daniel promised, and he meant it. For the first time in months, he felt purpose beyond the daily grind of retail management. At the checkout, Lily carefully counted out her money to pay for the groceries. The cashier, a young woman named Rita Chen, had witnessed the entire scene from her register and had tears streaming down her cheeks. She processed Lily's transaction with gentle care, triple-checking that the change was correct. You have a wonderful day, sweetie, Rita said, handing Lily her change and the plastic bag of groceries. You too, Ma'am, Lily said politely, her voice still a bit shaky, but filled with renewed hope. Patty walked Lily to the exit, her hand resting lightly on the girl's shoulder. Can I walk you home, honey? It's quite hot out there. Lily shook her head. It's okay, I only live a few blocks away, but thank you for being so nice to me. You're very welcome, dear. You take care of your mama, all right? I will. As Lily pushed through the doors into the blazing Texas heat, clutching her bag of groceries and her change, Patty watched her go. The old woman felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a sense that maybe the world wasn't quite as cold and indifferent as she'd begun to believe after Robert's death. Inside the store, George completed his own shopping, though he moved through the aisles in a daze, his mind replaying the encounter with Lily. When he reached the checkout, he found Daniel waiting for him. Mr. Strait, I made some calls while you were shopping. There's a social worker named Jennifer Hayes who works with families in crisis. I left her a message about Lily's situation. She'll look into it. George nodded approvingly. Thank you. That little girl deserves better than what she's dealing with. They all do, Daniel said quietly. Thinking of all the customers he saw daily who were clearly struggling, clearly one emergency away from disaster, they all deserve better. George paid for his items and prepared to leave, but before he could exit, Rita called out to him. Mr. Strait, I just wanted to say, what you did for that little girl. My sister has cancer, and it's been really hard on her kids. Seeing someone show kindness like that, it matters. It really matters. We all need to look out for each other, George said simply. That's all I was doing. As George Strait left the Walmart and climbed into his tour bus, parked discreetly at the far end of the lot, he sat for a long moment in silence. His road manager knocked on the door, asking if he was ready to head to the venue for sound check, but George held up a hand. He pulled out his phone and called his wife, Norma. When she answered, he said, Hey, honey, I just had the most remarkable encounter. Let me tell you about a little girl named Lily who reminded me why we do what we do. As he spoke, recounting the story, the tour bus pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward the venue. But George's mind remained in that Walmart aisle with a crying girl who had lost $20 and found something much more valuable: the kindness of strangers and the reminder that her inherent worth wasn't determined by the money in her pocket. Behind them, in the Walmart, life continued. Customers shopped, employees stocked shelves, and Daniel Fletcher returned to his office to face the email about layoffs. But something had shifted, some small crack in the mundane routine that let light seep through. In her checkout lane, Rita found herself smiling at customers more genuinely. In the cereal aisle, a teenager who had filmed part of the encounter on his phone decided not to post it to social media. Some moments were too sacred to be reduced to content. And in the parking lot, Patty Caldwell sat in her car, not quite ready to return to her empty house, thinking about how one small act of kindness had reminded her that connection and compassion were still possible. None of them knew that this was only the beginning, that Lily's story was about to touch more lives than any of them could imagine, that the ripples from this encounter would spread outward in ways both expected and surprising. 4 blocks away, Lily Catherine Morrison climbed the stairs to her apartment, carefully balancing the grocery bag. She opened the door to find her mother dozing fitfully on the couch, a blanket pulled up to her chin despite the heat. Rebecca's face was pale, drawn, and there were dark circles under her eyes that seemed to have deepened even in the few hours since Lily had left. Lily set the groceries down quietly and moved to her mother's side. She gently touched Rebecca's shoulder. "Mama, I'm home." Rebecca's eyes fluttered open, and she immediately tried to sit up, wincing at the effort. "Baby girl, you're back. Did you get everything okay?" Lily nodded, and then the story poured out. How she'd lost the money, how she'd cried, how the nice old lady and the kind man had helped her, how she'd gotten the groceries and still had change left over. She didn't mention George Strait's name because she didn't know it, only describing him as a really nice man in a cowboy hat. Rebecca listened with growing emotion, and when Lily finished, she pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry you had to go through that, but I'm so proud of how you handled it. And you were right to try to give the extra money back. That's exactly what you should have done." "I got it from selling him a smile, Mama," Lily said, pulling back to look at her mother earnestly. "So it wasn't charity. It was commerce. That's different, right?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back and nodded. "Yes, baby, that's different. That man sounds very wise and very kind." "He said to tell you that things are going to get better, Mama. He promised." Rebecca managed a weak smile, though she wasn't sure she believed it. But looking at her daughter's hopeful face, she couldn't bear to express her doubts. "Well then, we'll have to trust that, won't we?" As the Texas sun began its slow descent toward evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, the Morrison family had food for their table, hope in their hearts, and no idea that the encounter in Walmart had been witnessed by dozens of people who were, even now, carrying that story home with them. Stories have power. They spread, they grow, they inspire action. And this story of a little girl's tears, a country music legend's kindness, and a gesture of honesty that silenced a room, was just beginning its journey. Jennifer Hayes sat at her desk in the cramped offices of the San Antonio Child and Family Services Department, staring at her computer screen with bloodshot eyes. It was past 7 in the evening, and she was still working through her caseload, a caseload that had grown impossibly large over the past year as funding cuts reduced staff, while the number of families in crisis continued to climb. At 31 years old, Jennifer had been a social worker for 7 years, driven by idealism and a genuine desire to help vulnerable children. That idealism had been ground down by bureaucracy, insufficient resources, and the soul-crushing reality that no matter how hard she worked, there were always more families slipping through the cracks than she could catch. Her voicemail notification blinked insistently. She'd been ignoring it for the past hour, focused on completing a court-mandated report that was already 2 days overdue. Finally, with a sigh of resignation, she clicked to listen. "Ms. Hayes, this is Daniel Fletcher. I'm the manager at the Walmart on Commerce Street. I'm calling about a child who shops here, a little girl named Lily, maybe 7 or 8 years old. I witnessed something today that concerns me. She lost money her mother had given her for groceries and was absolutely distraught. It became clear that this family is struggling significantly. Another customer helped her out, but I think this situation needs attention from someone like you. I don't have a last name or address, but she said she lives a few blocks from the store. If you could look into this, I'd appreciate it. My number is... Jennifer wrote down the information, then immediately pulled up her database. She searched for any Lilies in the area around that Walmart who might fit the profile. 3 possibilities came up, but one immediately caught her attention. Lily Catherine Morrison, age 8, daughter of Rebecca Ann Morrison. There was a notation from 8 months ago, a referral from the school counselor about possible neglect due to Lily arriving at school without lunch and wearing inappropriate clothing for the weather. Jennifer clicked deeper into the file. The previous caseworker had done a home visit, determined the situation was due to financial hardship rather than willful neglect, connected Rebecca with some resources, and closed the case. But that had been 8 months ago. Before Jennifer scrolled down, before Rebecca's cancer diagnosis, which was noted in an update from the school. Damn it, Jennifer muttered to herself. She should have followed up. Someone should have followed up, but there were always too many cases, too few hours, too little support. She picked up her phone and dialed Daniel Fletcher's number. He answered on the second ring. "Mr. Fletcher, this is Jennifer Hayes returning your call. I think I know which child you're referring to. Can you tell me more about what you witnessed today?" Daniel recounted the scene in detail. Lily's desperation, her obvious poverty, her moral integrity in trying to return the excess money, and the concern that this 8-year-old was being sent alone to buy groceries for her sick mother. "Thank you for calling this in," Jennifer said when he'd finished. "I have a file on this family. I'll schedule a home visit as soon as possible." After hanging up, Jennifer sat back in her chair and rubbed her temples. She glanced at her calendar. She was already booked solid for the next week with court appearances, mandatory home visits for higher-risk cases, and meetings with foster families. But something about this situation pulled at her. Maybe it was the detail about Lily trying to give the money back. Maybe it was the exhaustion in Daniel Fletcher's voice, as if he too was barely holding himself together. Maybe it was just that Jennifer needed to believe that sometimes intervention could actually help, that her work mattered. She made a note to drive by the Morrison apartment first thing in the morning, before her official schedule began. It would mean starting her day at 6 a.m. instead of 7:30. But that was the job. That had always been the job. Jennifer gathered her things and headed out to the parking lot. Her car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door from a shopping cart incident, started reluctantly. As she drove home to her own small apartment, she thought about Lily Morrison and wondered what tomorrow's visit would reveal. Across the city, in a comfortable suburban home, Patty Caldwell was having trouble sleeping. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene at Walmart over and over in her mind. That little girl's face, the desperation, then the hope, then the stunning moment when she'd tried to return money she desperately needed. Patty thought about her own grandchildren, who lived comfortable lives with more toys than they could play with and more clothes than they could wear. They were good kids, but they'd never known real hardship, never had to choose between food and other necessities, never been sent alone to buy groceries with the family's last $20. She thought about Robert, her late husband, and how they'd volunteered together at the food bank every Thanksgiving for 30 years. After he died, she'd stopped going. The house felt too empty, the world felt too indifferent, and she'd gradually withdrawn from everything that had once given her life meaning. But today, something had shifted. That little girl had reminded her that there were still people who needed help, still opportunities to make a difference. And George Strait, a man who could have walked past, who had no obligation to get involved, had shown her that kindness wasn't just for the young or the energetic. It was for anyone with eyes to see and a heart that could still feel. Patty made a decision. Tomorrow, she would go back to the Walmart and talk to that manager, Daniel Fletcher. She would find out more about Lily's situation, and she would do something, whatever that something turned out to be. At the stadium across town, George Strait wrapped up his sound check, but his mind wasn't fully on the music. His band members noticed his distraction. "You okay, George?" his lead guitarist asked during a break. "Yeah," George said, then shook his head. "Actually, no. I had an encounter today that stuck with me." He told them about Lily, about her tears and her integrity, about a family clearly in crisis. His band listened quietly, and when he finished, his drummer spoke up. "My cousin runs a non-profit that helps families with medical expenses. If you want, I could reach out, see if they could do something for this girl and her mom." "I'd appreciate that," George said, "but keep it quiet. The family has pride. We need to respect that." That night's benefit concert was for cancer research, a cause George had supported for years. As he performed, he found himself thinking about Rebecca Morrison, a woman he'd never met who was fighting the disease while trying to raise a daughter alone. During his closing number, he dedicated it to all the parents out there who are fighting battles their kids don't fully understand, and to the kids who are stronger than they know. The audience gave him a standing ovation, not knowing the specific story behind the dedication, but feeling the emotion in his voice. The next morning, Jennifer Hayes pulled up to the address she'd found for the Morrison family at 6:15 a.m. The apartment complex was weathered and tired-looking, with paint peeling from the exterior walls, and a playground in the courtyard that had seen better days. But it wasn't the worst place Jennifer had visited, not by a long shot. People were trying here. She could see that in the swept walkways and the potted plants outside some doors, small attempts at dignity and beauty in difficult circumstances. She climbed the stairs to apartment 2B and knocked gently. After a long moment, she heard movement inside, and then the door opened a crack. A woman peered out, and Jennifer immediately recognized the signs of serious illness: the extreme thinness, the pallor, the headscarf, the exhaustion radiating from every line of her face. "Rebecca Morrison?" Jennifer said gently. "I'm Jennifer Hayes from Child and Family Services. I'm sorry to show up unannounced so early. Could I speak with you for a few minutes?" Jennifer watched the fear flash across Rebecca's face, the primal terror of any parent in a precarious situation when a social worker appears at their door. "Is this about Lily?" Rebecca's voice was hoarse, frightened. "Is she in trouble? Did something happen at school?" No, Jennifer said quickly, holding up her hands in a peaceful gesture. "Lily's fine. This is actually a follow-up visit. May I come in? I promise this won't take long, and I'm here to help, not to cause problems." Rebecca hesitated, then opened the door wider. Jennifer stepped into the small apartment and took in the situation with practiced eyes. The space was clean but sparse. Minimal furniture, no television, a small kitchen area with almost nothing on the counters. But it wasn't neglectful. It was poverty, which was different. The apartment was organized. There were children's books stacked neatly on a shelf, and Lily's makeshift bedroom area in the corner of the living room had been set up with obvious care and love. Lily herself was sitting at the small kitchen table, eating a piece of toast with peanut butter, likely her breakfast. She looked up at Jennifer with wide, nervous eyes. "Good morning, Lily," Jennifer said warmly. "I'm Jennifer. I'm not here to cause any worry. I just wanted to check in with you and your mom." "Did I do something wrong yesterday?" Lily asked quietly. "At the store?" "No, sweetie. You didn't do anything wrong at all. In fact, I heard you were very brave and very honest." Rebecca gestured for Jennifer to sit down at the table. She lowered herself into a chair with visible effort, and Jennifer couldn't help but notice how the simple act of standing to answer the door seemed to have drained what little energy she had. "Ms. Morrison, I'm going to be straight with you, because I think you deserve that," Jennifer began. "I received a call yesterday from someone who was concerned about your family's situation. Before you worry, nobody is trying to take Lily away from you. Nobody thinks you're a bad mother. but I'm here because I want to make sure you're aware of all the resources available to help you through what I know is an incredibly difficult time." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "I'm doing the best I can. I swear I am. I know it's not perfect, but I love my daughter, and I'm trying so hard to—" "I can see that," Jennifer interrupted gently. "I can see how much you love her, and I can see that you're doing everything possible. That's not in question. But Rebecca, you shouldn't have to do this alone. There are programs, assistance, resources that could help." "I've tried," Rebecca said, her voice breaking. "I've applied for so many things. Food assistance takes months to process. Medical assistance doesn't cover all my medications. The cancer center has a hardship fund, but there's a waiting list. I'm working as much as I can, but the chemo, some days I can barely get out of bed." Jennifer pulled out a folder from her bag. "I understand. The system isn't built for the urgency of real life, but let me show you some options you might not know about." For the next 20 minutes, Jennifer went through various programs: emergency assistance funds, organizations specifically for families dealing with cancer, food banks with home delivery services, school programs that could provide Lily with free meals even during summer break, and medical bill advocacy services that could negotiate with hospitals. Lily sat quietly during this conversation, her toast forgotten, watching her mother's face move between hope and exhaustion. She was used to being quiet during adult conversations, used to making herself small and unobtrusive so she wouldn't add to her mother's burdens. "There's one more thing," Jennifer said carefully. "I know you value your independence, and I respect that immensely. But Lily mentioned to someone yesterday that she walks to the store alone. She's only 8, Rebecca. In this neighborhood, that concerns me." Rebecca's face flushed with shame. "I know. I know it's not ideal. But I can't always make the walk myself, and we need food. What am I supposed to do? Let us both go hungry? What about neighbors, family, friends who could help? My parents died years ago. David's family blamed me for the divorce and cut off contact. And neighbors." Rebecca gestured vaguely. "Everyone here is struggling with their own problems. I can't ask them to take on mine too." Jennifer made notes, her mind already working through possibilities. "Would you be open to me connecting you with a volunteer organization? They have people who can help with errands, grocery shopping, transportation to medical appointments. There's no cost, and it's not charity, it's community support." Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, her pride warring with her exhaustion and the undeniable reality that she needed help. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, yes, if it means Lily doesn't have to go to the store alone anymore, then yes." "Good," Jennifer said, relief evident in her voice. She turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, would you mind showing me your room, just so I can see where you sleep and make sure you have everything you need?" Lily glanced at her mother, who nodded permission. She led Jennifer to the corner of the living room that had been transformed into a sleeping area. There was a sleeping bag on a yoga mat, a small lamp, a cardboard box holding neatly folded clothes, and a few stuffed animals arranged carefully on a pillow. "This is nice," Jennifer said, and she meant it. Despite the lack of actual furniture, it was clear that Rebecca had tried to make this space special for her daughter. The sleeping bag had unicorns on it, the stuffed animals were clean and well-maintained, and there were glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling above where Lily slept. "Mama put up the stars," Lily said softly. "She said, even though we can't see the real stars from our window because of the streetlights, I could still have stars to look at before I fall asleep." Jennifer felt a lump form in her throat. This was what people who didn't do her job didn't understand. Poverty wasn't always about neglect or lack of love. Sometimes it was about parents who loved their children desperately but couldn't provide what they needed, despite their best efforts. Sometimes it was about mothers who put glow-in-the-dark stars on ceilings even when they could barely afford food. Your mum sounds pretty amazing, Jennifer said. She is, Lily agreed. She's the best mama in the whole world. Even when she's sick, she always makes sure I'm okay first. They returned to the kitchen area, where Rebecca was reviewing the papers Jennifer had left with her, her finger tracing down the list of resources with an expression that mingled hope with overwhelming fatigue. "I'll be checking in," Jennifer said as she prepared to leave. "Not because I'm worried about Lily's safety with you, but because I want to make sure you're getting the help you need." "Is that okay?" Rebecca nodded. "Thank you, really. I didn't know some of these things existed. A lot of people don't. That's part of the problem with our system. The people who need help most are often too exhausted to navigate the maze of finding it." As Jennifer walked back to her car, she called the volunteer organization she'd mentioned and explained the Morrison situation. The coordinator promised to have someone reach out to Rebecca that afternoon. Then Jennifer called the school district's summer meal program and arranged for Lily to be enrolled immediately, which would mean guaranteed breakfast and lunch 5 days a week. It wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough to fix everything wrong with this family's situation. But it was something, and in Jennifer's line of work, something was often all you could hope for. Meanwhile, at the Walmart, Daniel Fletcher was arriving for his morning shift when he spotted Patty Caldwell waiting near the entrance. He recognized her immediately, the elderly woman who had comforted Lily the day before. "Mr. Fletcher?" Patty approached him with determination in her eyes. "I was hoping to catch you. I'm Patricia Caldwell. I was here yesterday when that situation with the little girl happened." "I remember you, Ma'am. You were very kind to her." "I haven't been able to stop thinking about it," Patty said. "I want to help. I don't know how exactly, but I need to do something. Can you tell me anything about her situation?" Daniel hesitated, bound by both professional ethics and simple human decency not to gossip about customers. But something in Patty's face, the genuine concern, the determination, made him trust her. "I made some calls yesterday," he said. "A social worker is looking into it. The girl's name is Lily Morrison. Her mother has cancer, and they're struggling financially. That's really all I know." "Morrison," Patty repeated, committing it to memory. "And you said a social worker is involved now?" "Yes, Ma'am. Jennifer Hayes from Child and Family Services. I gave her the information I had." Patty nodded slowly, processing this. "Thank you for telling me, and thank you for caring enough to make those calls." She turned to leave, but Daniel called after her. "Mrs. Caldwell? If you do find a way to help them, be careful about their pride. The mother apparently has strong feelings about accepting charity. That little girl mentioned it yesterday, said her mama taught her that handouts make you forget your dignity." "That's good to know," Patty said thoughtfully. "Pride is important, especially when you don't have much else left." Patty went home and sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, thinking. She had her late husband's life insurance money, their paid-off house, Social Security, and Robert's pension. She had more money than she needed, and no real purpose for it beyond her modest living expenses. Her children were grown and financially stable. What was she saving it for? An idea began to form. She picked up her phone and called her son, Robert Jr., who was a lawyer in Houston. "Bobby, it's Mom. I need some legal advice about setting up a fund to help someone. Anonymous. Nothing they could trace back to me. Can you help with that?" Across town, George Strait's drummer, Tommy Wells, was on the phone with his cousin Maria, who ran the non-profit his had mentioned. "Maria, I've got a situation that might be perfect for the kind of work you do. Single mom, cancer patient, raising a young daughter alone. They're barely surviving." "Send me the information," Maria said immediately. "We've got our annual fundraiser coming up in 3 weeks. If we can verify the need, we might be able to allocate some assistance." "How much verification do you need?" "Medical records, income documentation, bills, the usual. We have to be accountable to our donors." "Right, of course. Let me see what I can find out." After hanging up, Tommy sat for a moment, thinking. He couldn't just call this family out of the blue and ask for their personal financial information. That would be invasive and probably frightening. He needed an intermediary, someone who already had a relationship with the family and could explain the offer properly. He remembered George mentioning that the store manager had seemed concerned and involved. Maybe that was the place to start. Later that morning, Daniel Fletcher received 2 phone calls that would further change the trajectory of the Morrison family story. The first was from Tommy Wells, explaining about his cousin's non-profit and asking if Daniel could help facilitate contact with the family. The second was from Patty Caldwell's son, asking if Daniel would be willing to serve as a trustee for an anonymous assistance fund for a family in need that shops at your store. Daniel, who had spent the morning reviewing employee schedules and trying to figure out how to meet the corporate mandate for cost cuts without destroying lives, found himself in the unexpected position of coordinating multiple people's efforts to help a family he barely knew. It was, he realized, the first time in months that he'd felt like his job had any meaning beyond profit margins and inventory management. He agreed to both requests, then spent his lunch break drafting a careful letter to Rebecca Morrison, explaining that several community resources had become aware of her situation and wanted to help, if she was willing to accept it. He emphasized that these were legitimate organizations, provided contact information for verification, and made it clear that there was no obligation and no strings attached. That evening, when Rebecca checked her mailbox, something she'd been avoiding because it mostly contained overdue notices and collection agency letters, she found Daniel's letter. She read it 3 times, sitting on the stairs outside her apartment building, trying to determine if this was real or some kind of scam. Lily, who had been playing in the courtyard under the watchful eye of a neighbor, came running over. "What is it, Mama?" "I don't know, baby. Maybe it's something good, for once." Rebecca decided to call the number for Jennifer Hayes, the social worker, to verify that this was legitimate. Jennifer confirmed that yes, there were indeed people who wanted to help, and no, it wasn't too good to be true. "Why?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would strangers want to help us?" "Because you need help," Jennifer said simply, "and because sometimes people are good. That's all. Sometimes people are just good." That night, after Lily had fallen asleep under her glow-in-the-dark stars, Rebecca sat on the couch and cried for the first time in weeks. Not tears of despair this time, but tears of overwhelm, of disbelief, of tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, things might actually get better. She thought about the man in the cowboy hat that Lily had described, the one who had helped her daughter in Walmart. She didn't know his name or who he was, but she whispered a prayer of thanks for him anyway. She thanked God for kind strangers, for her daughter's resilience, for the possibility that they might not have to face this battle completely alone after all. In her own home across town, Patty Caldwell felt something she hadn't felt since Robert died, excitement about tomorrow. She had plans to make, people to contact, ways to help. Her kitchen table was covered with notes and contact information. She'd already spoken to the coordinator at the local food bank, the manager of a charitable pharmacy program, and 3 different utility assistance organizations. Robert would have been proud, she thought. He'd always said that money was just a tool, and what mattered was how you used it. Well, she was going to use theirs to make a real difference for this family. At the stadium, George Strait was preparing for his 2nd night of performances. Before going on stage, he said a quiet prayer, something he did before every show. But tonight he added a specific request for a little girl named Lily and her mother, whose names he hadn't known yesterday but had learned today through his drummer's investigation. "Help them find their way through this storm," he prayed, "and help the people trying to help them do so with wisdom and grace." The concert that night was electric. The crowd sang along to every word, and George felt the music in a way that reminded him why he'd gotten into this business in the first place. Not for fame or fortune, but for connection, for the shared human experience, for the reminder that we're all in this together. During one of his ballads, he saw a woman in the front row crying, and he wondered what battle she was fighting, what storm she was weathering. He hoped that the song brought her some comfort, the way he hoped that his encounter with Lily had brought some light into her difficult world. After the show, Tommy approached him. "I've got some good news about that situation we discussed. Several people are stepping up to help. My cousin's nonprofit, an anonymous donor setting up a fund, the social worker connecting them with services. It's all coming together." George felt a warmth in his chest. That's good. That's real good. Make sure they know it's not about pity or charity. It's about community, about people taking care of people. "I think they're handling it right," Tommy assured him. "Everyone involved seems to understand the dignity piece." Back at the Morrison apartment, Lily lay awake despite the late hour, looking up at her glow-in-the-dark stars. She was thinking about the man in the cowboy hat, about how he'd made her smile when she thought she'd never smile again, about how he'd turned her worst day into something that felt almost magical. She didn't know that her simple encounter in a Walmart had set off a chain reaction of compassion. She didn't know that multiple people were now working to help her family. She just knew that for the first time in a long time, her mother had smiled before bed, and that had to mean something good was coming. "Thank you," she whispered to the stars, not sure who she was thanking, but feeling like gratitude was the right response to whatever was happening. In the darkness of her corner of the living room, with the sounds of the city humming outside and her mother's labored breathing audible from the bedroom, Lily Catherine Morrison drifted off to sleep, with hope nestled quietly in her heart, a small, fragile thing, but growing stronger. 3 days after the Walmart encounter, Rebecca Morrison sat in the waiting room of the San Antonio Community Care Clinic, surrounded by other patients who looked as exhausted and worried as she felt. The chairs were uncomfortable plastic, the magazines were months out of date, and the fluorescent lighting gave everything a sickly pallor. But Rebecca was grateful to be here. This clinic offered sliding scale fees based on income, which was the only reason she could afford to come at all. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Hayes. "Checking in. How are you managing? Did you contact any of the organizations from the list?" Rebecca typed back slowly, her hands shaking from a combination of low blood sugar and medication side effects. "Yes. Have appointments set up. It's overwhelming, but good overwhelming, thank you." The truth was more complicated. The past 72 hours had been a whirlwind of phone calls, paperwork, and appointments. Jennifer had helped her apply for emergency food assistance, which had been approved with surprising speed. A volunteer from the Senior Companions program had shown up yesterday, a kind woman named Patty, who Rebecca didn't know was the same person from Walmart, offering to help with grocery shopping and transportation to medical appointments. At first, Rebecca had been suspicious. Things didn't just get better, not in her experience. When David had left, she'd learned that the universe didn't send rescue parties. You survived or you didn't, and nobody cared much either way. But Jennifer had patiently explained each organization, provided verification, and even accompanied Rebecca to the first meeting with the food bank coordinator. "Ms. Morrison," a nurse appeared in the doorway with a clipboard. "Dr. Patel will see you now." Rebecca followed the nurse down a narrow hallway into an examination room. Dr. Natasha Patel, her oncologist, was a petite woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that Rebecca appreciated. She didn't sugarcoat things, but she also didn't strip away hope entirely. "Your blood work is back," Dr. Patel said after the usual examination. She pulled up results on her computer screen, and Rebecca tried to read her expression, searching for clues about whether this was good news or bad. "Your white blood cell count is low. which we expected given the chemo regimen. But Rebecca, I'm concerned about your overall nutrition. Your protein levels are problematic. Are you eating enough? Rebecca felt shame heat her cheeks. I eat what I can afford. Dr. Patel nodded, unsurprised. She'd been practicing medicine in underserved communities long enough to know that her medical recommendations often clashed with economic reality. I'm going to give you some samples of nutritional supplements. They'll help, but you need real food too. Protein, vegetables, fruits. Your body can't fight cancer if it doesn't have fuel. I know, it's been difficult. I understand, but Rebecca, here's the thing. You can't take care of Lily if you don't take care of yourself. I know you're putting her first. Every mother does. But on this particular journey, you need to put your own oxygen mask on first, as they say on airplanes. Rebecca nodded, tears threatening. She'd heard this lecture before, but knowing what she should do and being able to do it were two very different things. Dr. Patel softened her tone. Look, I know it's hard. I'm going to refer you to our patient advocate. They can help connect you with resources, meal programs, nutritional assistance, things like that. Will you talk to them? Yes, Rebecca agreed. Actually, I've already started getting help. Just in the past few days. It's new, but I'm trying to accept it. Good. That's very good. Dr. Patel made notes in Rebecca's chart. I want to see you again in 2 weeks. If you can improve your nutrition in that time, we might be able to continue with the treatment schedule as planned. But if your body doesn't get stronger, we may have to adjust. The unspoken implication hung in the air. Adjust could mean delay treatment, and delay could mean the cancer advancing. Rebecca understood perfectly. She left the clinic with a bag full of supplement samples and a heavy heart. The bus ride home took 40 minutes, and she spent it staring out the window at the city passing by, people going about their lives, unaware of the battles being fought in hospitals and clinics, in apartments where single mothers tried to figure out how to afford both food and medicine. When Rebecca arrived home, she found Patty Caldwell sitting on the stairs outside her building, a warm smile on her face. Hi, Rebecca. I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I wanted to check if you needed anything from the store, and I thought maybe we could go together, if you're feeling up to it. Rebecca's first instinct was to say no, to insist she was fine, to protect her pride. But then she remembered Dr. Patel's words about accepting help, and she remembered that Lily needed her to be strong. That would be nice, actually. Let me just check on Lily first. Lily was inside the apartment, working on a coloring book at the kitchen table. A new one that Patty had brought yesterday, claiming it was extra and she thought Lily might enjoy it. The girl looked up with a smile that lit up her whole face. Mama, you're home. Did the doctor say you're getting better? Getting there, baby. Slowly but surely. Rebecca kissed the top of Lily's head. Mrs. Caldwell and I are going to the grocery store. Do you want to come, or do you want to stay here and keep coloring? Can I come? Please? Of course. The three of them walked to the Walmart together, Patty maintaining a pace slow enough for Rebecca to manage. Along the way, Patty chatted about her garden, her grandchildren, nothing heavy or demanding. Rebecca found herself relaxing slightly, appreciating the normalcy of simple conversation. At the store, Patty casually suggested they split up to shop more efficiently. What Rebecca didn't know was that Patty had a list of items specifically recommended for cancer patients, high-protein foods, nutrient-dense options, and was quietly adding them to her own cart with the intention of accidentally buying too much and offering the extras to Rebecca. It was while they were in the produce section that they encountered someone Rebecca had never expected to see again, George Strait. He was back in San Antonio for a follow-up charity event and had stopped at the same Walmart, drawn back by some impulse he couldn't quite name. When he saw Lily, recognition flashed across his face immediately. "Well, hello there," he said warmly. "I remember you." The young lady with the $1 million smile, Lily's face lit up with recognition. "You're the nice man from before." Rebecca looked between them, confused, and then the pieces clicked into place. The cowboy hat, the kindness, the way Lily had described him. "You're the one who helped her when she lost the money." George removed his hat respectfully. "George Strait, ma'am. And I didn't help her so much as she helped me. That smile was worth every penny I paid for it. I'm Rebecca Morrison, Lily's mother." Rebecca extended her hand, and George shook it gently. "I can't thank you enough for what you did. She was so upset, and you gave her hope when she needed it most." "She impressed me greatly," George said honestly. "The way she tried to give the money back because it was more than the groceries cost, that showed real character. You're raising a remarkable young lady, Ms. Morrison." Patty had been watching this exchange with growing recognition of her own. So this was Lily's mother. The connection solidified in her mind. This was the family she'd decided to help, though Rebecca didn't know that yet. "Are you here for another concert?" Patty asked George, inserting herself into the conversation. "Yes, ma'am. Another benefit for the cancer center here in San Antonio. It's a cause close to my heart." Rebecca felt her throat tighten. "My daughter told me what you said, about how things would get better. I've been holding on to that, trying to believe it." George met her eyes, and in that moment, a deep understanding passed between them. He saw her exhaustion, her fear, her determination. She saw his sincerity, his genuine care for a stranger's well-being. "Things have a way of working out," George said softly. "Sometimes not the way we expect, but they work out. You keep fighting, and you keep raising that beautiful daughter of yours. That's all any of us can do." Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, can we take a picture, please, so we can remember?" Rebecca hesitated, self-conscious about her appearance, the headscarf, the weight loss, the visible signs of illness. But Lily's hopeful face melted her resistance. "If Mr. Strait doesn't mind." "I'd be honored," George said immediately. Patty took the photo on Rebecca's phone, George kneeling beside Lily, Rebecca standing behind her daughter with her hands on the girl's shoulders. All three of them were smiling genuinely, and when Rebecca looked at the picture later, she would see something she'd forgotten was possible: joy in the midst of struggle. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, George excused himself to finish his shopping, but before he left, he did something that would spark controversy later. He handed Rebecca a business card. "This is the contact information for the foundation I work with. They help families dealing with medical crises. If you call that number and tell them I sent you, they'll walk you through the process. No strings attached, just people helping people." Rebecca took the card with shaking hands. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just call them, please, for Lily's sake, if not your own." After he'd gone, Rebecca stared at the card in her hand. Patty gently touched her arm. "He's right, you know. There's no shame in accepting help when you need it. The shame would be in letting pride prevent your daughter from having her mother around as long as possible." Those words hit Rebecca like a physical blow because they cut straight to the truth. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about Lily. It had always been about Lily. They finished shopping, with Patty indeed accidentally buying too much and insisting Rebecca take the extras, and returned to the apartment. After Patty left, Rebecca sat at her kitchen table with the business card in front of her, her phone beside it, having an internal war with herself. Lily came and sat next to her. "Are you okay, Mama?" "I'm thinking, baby, just thinking about choices." "Good choices or bad choices?" Rebecca smiled despite herself. "I hope good ones. I'm trying to make good ones." She picked up the phone and dialed the number on the card. Meanwhile, across town, Jennifer Hayes was dealing with a different kind of complication in the Morrison case. She'd received a call from an administrator at Lily's school. reporting that someone had anonymously paid the outstanding balance on Lily's school lunch account, a balance that had been accruing because Rebecca couldn't always afford the reduced-price meals, and had prepaid for the entire next school year. This should have been good news, but it raised questions. Who had done this? How had they known about the Morrison family? Was this appropriate, or was it crossing ethical boundaries? Jennifer had to navigate these questions carefully. On one hand, Lily was getting fed, which was objectively good. On the other hand, anonymous interventions could become problematic if they weren't properly vetted and coordinated. She called Daniel Fletcher at the Walmart to see if he knew anything about this. "It might have been part of what Mrs. Caldwell set up," Daniel said. "She consulted with her son, who's a lawyer, about creating an anonymous assistance fund for the family. She wanted to make sure it was done legally and ethically." Jennifer sighed. Well-meaning civilians trying to help could sometimes complicate her job, but she couldn't deny that Patty's heart was in the right place. "Can you tell Mrs. Caldwell that I appreciate her generosity, but I'd like to coordinate these efforts, just so we don't overwhelm the family or create dependency issues?" "I'll pass that along," Daniel promised. The coordination meeting happened 2 days later in Jennifer's office. Present were Jennifer, Patty Caldwell, Maria Rodriguez from the medical nonprofit Tommy Wells had contacted, a representative from the food bank, and Daniel Fletcher as the unofficial liaison. "We're here to discuss how best to help the Morrison family without overwhelming them or undermining their independence," Jennifer began. "I know everyone here has the best intentions, but we need to make sure we're truly helping and not just making ourselves feel good." Patty spoke up first. "I don't want credit, I don't want thanks, I just want to help. But I understand the need for coordination. Tell me how I can be most useful." "Transportation and companionship," Jennifer said immediately. "Rebecca needs rides to medical appointments, and she needs someone to talk to. Those are things that feel less like charity and more like friendship. Can you do that?" "Absolutely," Patty said. Maria addressed the group next. "Our non-profit can potentially help with medical bills, but we need documentation. We have to be accountable to our donors. Is the family willing to provide that?" "Rebecca is calling your organization this week," Jennifer said. "George Strait gave her your contact information." Maria's eyebrows shot up. "George gave her our card personally?" "Apparently they ran into each other at Walmart. He encouraged her to reach out." "Well, that certainly speaks to the legitimacy of the need," Maria said. "If George vouches for them, that carries weight." Daniel contributed information about the job training program his store offered. "If Rebecca gets well enough to return to work, we have positions available, flexible hours, decent benefits. I can fast-track her application." Jennifer made notes on all of this, creating a coordination plan. They agreed to meet monthly to assess the Morrison family's needs and adjust support accordingly. The goal was to help them become self-sufficient while providing a safety net during the crisis period. After the meeting, Patty pulled Jennifer aside. "Can I ask you something, off the record?" "Of course." "How often do families like the Morrisons fall through the cracks? How many people are out there struggling like this with no help at all?" Jennifer's expression became grave. "Too many. Far too many. The safety net has so many holes that it's barely a net anymore. Rebecca and Lily are getting help because of a fortuitous series of events, the right person seeing them at the right time, connections being made, resources aligning. But for every family that gets this lucky, there are dozens who don't." Patty nodded slowly, processing this. "Then I suppose I need to think bigger than just one family." "One family is a great start," Jennifer said. "Don't minimize what you're doing. You're changing their entire trajectory. That matters enormously." That night, Rebecca Morrison sat at her kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. applications, forms, documentation requests from various organizations. It was overwhelming, but it was also hopeful. For the first time since her diagnosis, she had a team. She had people fighting alongside her instead of facing this battle alone. Lily was asleep under her stars, her breathing soft and even. Rebecca looked at her daughter and made a promise. She would swallow her pride, accept the help, do whatever it took to be around as long as possible. Dignity was important, yes, but being alive for her daughter was more important. She picked up a pen and began filling out the first form, then the second, then the third. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. Her hand was cramping and tears were streaming down her face. But they were tears of determination, not despair. Things were going to get better. George Strait had promised, and Rebecca was choosing to believe him. 2 weeks after the coordination meeting, Rebecca Morrison's world began to unravel in a way that made all the previous struggles seem manageable by comparison. It started with a phone call at 6 in the morning, never a good sign. "Ms. Morrison, this is Sandra Chen from Memorial Hospital Billing Department. I'm calling because your account has been sent to collections. We've attempted to work with you on a payment plan, but we haven't received any payments in 3 months. We need to discuss your options." Rebecca's heart sank. The hospital bills. She'd been so focused on keeping up with the smaller payments, utilities, rent, medication co-pays, that she'd let the massive hospital debt fall by the wayside. The last 3 months had been particularly brutal financially, and she'd made the calculated decision to pay for food and rent rather than chip away at a $47,000 medical bill. "I understand," Rebecca said, her voice tight. "I've been dealing with cancer treatment and trying to keep my family housed and fed. The hospital bills are important, but they're not more important than keeping a roof over my daughter's head." Sandra's voice was professionally sympathetic, but firm. "I understand that, Ms. Morrison, and I'm sorry for what you're going through. But the hospital is a business, and this debt needs to be addressed. If we can't arrange a payment plan today, the account will proceed to the legal collections process." After a tense 20-minute conversation, Rebecca agreed to a payment plan she had no idea how she'd manage. $200 per month, which might as well have been $2,000 given her current financial situation. She hung up feeling sick to her stomach, her hands shaking so badly she had to sit down. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Mama, who was that?" "Just some people from the hospital, baby. Nothing for you to worry about." Rebecca forced a smile, but Lily was learning to read the tension in her mother's face. The day got worse. At her afternoon shift at Betty's kitchen, Rebecca felt increasingly dizzy and weak. She'd been skipping meals again to make sure Lily had enough to eat, despite Patty's help with groceries. The supplements Dr. Patel had given her were running low, and she hadn't had the energy to go to the clinic to get more. Around 2:30, while carrying a tray of food to a table, Rebecca's vision blurred. She tried to steady herself, but her legs gave out. The tray crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter, and Rebecca collapsed beside it. She woke up in the emergency room at Memorial Hospital, the very same hospital whose billing department had threatened her that morning. The irony wasn't lost on her. A young doctor was checking her vitals. "Ms. Morrison, you're severely dehydrated and malnourished. When did you last eat a proper meal?" Rebecca tried to think. Yesterday, the day before. Time had become slippery lately, measured only in doses of medication and survival tasks. "I don't remember," she admitted. "We're going to admit you for observation and get you rehydrated. You can't continue like this. Your body is shutting down." "I can't stay," Rebecca said immediately, trying to sit up. "My daughter, she's home alone. School gets out at 3:15. She'll be scared if I'm not there. Is there someone who can pick her up? A family member, friend?" Rebecca's mind raced through her very short list of contacts. Jennifer Hayes, Patty Caldwell, That was it. Those were the only two people she could call. With shaking hands, she dialed Jennifer's number. Voicemail. She tried Patty next, and relief flooded through her when the older woman answered on the second ring. "Rebecca, is everything all right?" "Patty, I'm so sorry to ask this, but I'm in the emergency room at Memorial. I collapsed at work. Lily gets out of school in 20 minutes and she has no way to get home. Could you possibly—" "I'm already in my car," Patty interrupted. "Which school?" Rebecca gave her the information, along with the emergency contact code the school required. After hanging up, she lay back against the hospital bed, tears streaming down her face. This was her worst nightmare, being unable to care for Lily, having to rely on others, proving that maybe she wasn't strong enough to do this alone after all. The doctor returned with a nurse, who started an IV. "We're going to keep you overnight at minimum. You need rest and proper nutrition. Your body has been running on empty for too long." "I can't afford overnight," Rebecca said. "I just got a call this morning about my bills going to collections. I can't add more debt. Right now, your health is the priority. We'll worry about bills later. If you don't take care of yourself, Ms. Morrison, you won't be around to worry about bills at all." It was the same logic Dr. Patel had used, the same argument that cut through Rebecca's defenses because it was undeniably true. She nodded weakly and closed her eyes, too exhausted to fight anymore. At Pinewood Elementary School, Lily stood by the pickup area, scanning the crowd of parents and cars for her mother's familiar face. She wasn't there. Minutes ticked by. Other children were picked up, driven away. The crowd thinned. Lily's teacher, Mrs. Karen Holloway, noticed the girl standing alone and approached. "Lily, where's your mom?" "She must be running late," Lily said, trying to keep her voice steady. "She'll be here." But as more time passed, the fear began to creep in. What if something had happened? What if her mom had gotten sicker? What if she'd been in an accident? Lily's imagination ran wild with terrible possibilities. Then she saw an older woman she didn't recognize approaching with Mrs. Holloway. Lily's muscles tensed, ready to run if needed. Her mother had taught her about stranger danger. "Lily, this is Mrs. Caldwell," the teacher said gently. "She called the office with the right emergency code. Your mother is okay, but she had to go to the hospital. Mrs. Caldwell is going to take you to her." Lily searched the woman's face, looking for signs of deception or danger, but what she saw was genuine kindness and concern. "Your mama is going to be fine, sweetheart," Patty said softly. "She just needs some rest and medicine. She asked me to come get you because she knew you'd be worried." Something in Patty's tone, or maybe in her eyes, made Lily trust her. She nodded and took the offered hand, allowing herself to be led to Patty's car. On the drive to the hospital, Patty spoke gently about Rebecca's condition without minimizing it or making it scarier than necessary, a delicate balance that she managed well. "Your mama has been working very hard to take care of you, and sometimes, when we work too hard without taking care of ourselves, our bodies say enough and make us rest. That's what happened. The doctors are giving her medicine and food through a tube in her arm, and she's going to feel much better soon." "Is she going to die?" Lily asked, her voice small and frightened. Patty took a breath before answering. She'd learned from raising her own children that kids deserved honest answers, even when the truth was difficult. "Sweetheart, your mama is very sick with cancer, and I can't promise you what's going to happen. Nobody can. But I can tell you that she's fighting very hard, and there are a lot of people helping her now. She's not alone anymore, and neither are you." Lily processed this silently, staring out the window at the passing buildings. When they arrived at the hospital, Patty held Lily's hand as they navigated the maze of corridors to Rebecca's room. Rebecca was awake when they arrived, connected to an IV and various monitoring devices. Her face was still pale, but she managed to smile when she saw her daughter. "Hi, baby girl." Lily ran to the bedside and carefully hugged her mother, mindful of the tubes and wires. "I was so scared, Mama. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Rebecca stroked Lily's hair, her heart breaking. "But I'm going to be okay. The doctors are taking good care of me." Patty stood back, giving them privacy, but her mind was already working through practical matters. Lily would need a place to stay while Rebecca was hospitalized. School clothes for tomorrow, dinner tonight, a sense of security and normalcy in what must be a terrifying situation. After a few minutes, Patty gently interrupted. "Rebecca, I don't want to intrude, but we need to figure out arrangements for Lily while you're here. I'm happy to have her stay with me. I have a guest room, and it would be no trouble at all." Rebecca's first instinct was to refuse, but what choice did she have? She couldn't discharge herself against medical advice, not this time, and Lily couldn't stay in a hospital room overnight. "Are you sure? I don't want to impose—" "You're not imposing, I'm offering. There's a difference." Patty's tone was firm but kind. "Let me help, please. Robert, my late husband, always said that we're not meant to go through life alone. Let me be there for Lily while you focus on getting better." Lily looked up at her mother with wide, frightened eyes. "I'll be good, Mama. I promise I'll be really good." "Oh, sweetheart, you're always good." Rebecca cupped her daughter's face. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and Mrs. Caldwell is right. This is just for a day or two until I get stronger. Then we'll be home together again." The hospital social worker, a different one than Jennifer Hayes, came by to discuss arrangements. She verified Patty's background quickly, the advantage of being a 73-year-old widow with a clean record and solid references, and approved the temporary placement. That night, in Patty's comfortable home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, Lily sat at the dinner table picking at a homemade meal of baked chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Everything was delicious, but her appetite had vanished, replaced by a knot of worry that sat heavy in her stomach. "Not hungry?" Patty asked gently. "I'm worried about Mama." "That's understandable. But you know what would make your Mama feel better? Knowing that you're eating good food and taking care of yourself. Can you try? For her." Lily managed a few more bites, and Patty didn't push beyond that. After dinner, she showed Lily the guest room, a cozy space with a real bed, clean sheets, and even a small bookshelf filled with children's books from when Patty's grandchildren visited. "There's a bathroom right across the hall. If you need anything during the night, my room is at the end of the hallway, and my door is always open. You're safe here, Lily. I promise." After Lily had changed into the pajamas they'd picked up from the Morrison apartment, Patty helped her settle into bed. She sat on the edge of the mattress, and they talked quietly about small things. Lily's favorite subjects in school, the books she liked to read, the games she played at recess. "Mrs. Caldwell?" Lily said, as Patty was about to turn out the light. "Why are you being so nice to us? You don't even know us." Patty was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "I lost my husband a couple years ago, and after he died, I felt very alone. I stopped doing a lot of the things that used to matter to me, but then I saw you crying in that store, and something woke up inside me. I remembered that we're all connected, all responsible for each other in some way. Helping you and your mama isn't just about being nice. It's about remembering what it means to be human." Lily thought about this. The man with the cowboy hat said something like that too. He said we all need to look out for each other. He's a wise man, that Mr. Strait. "Do you think my mama is going to be okay?" Patty could have offered empty reassurances, but she respected Lily enough to be honest. "I think your mama is getting the help she needs right now, and that's the best chance for her to be okay. And whatever happens, you won't face it alone. I promise you that." It wasn't the answer Lily wanted, but it was the truth. And sometimes the truth is the only real comfort we can offer. The next morning, Jennifer Hayes received a call from the hospital social worker explaining Rebecca's admission. "Jennifer, immediately reached out to Maria Rodriguez from the medical nonprofit. The Morrison situation just became more urgent. Rebecca collapsed from malnutrition and exhaustion. She's hospitalized, racking up more medical debt she can't pay, and if she doesn't get stable soon, we're looking at potential child welfare intervention. How close are we to that? Maria asked, concern evident in her voice. Not immediately close, but it's on the radar now. If Rebecca can't care for Lily safely, the system will step in. And once the system steps in, it's very hard to step back out. We need to prevent that if possible. What does she need? Everything. Food security, medical bill assistance, potentially help with rent, access to better health care, mental health support, the works. This isn't a band-aid situation anymore. This requires comprehensive intervention. Maria was quiet for a moment, calculating. Our next board meeting is in 3 days. I'm going to recommend we make the Morrison family our primary assistance case for this quarter. That would free up significant resources, potentially up to $30,000 in combined medical bill relief, food assistance, and emergency support. That would be life-changing for them. I need to verify everything first. Can you help me compile the documentation? Absolutely. I'll start pulling it together today. After the call, Jennifer sat back in her chair and allowed herself a moment of cautious hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could keep this family intact. Maybe Rebecca and Lily wouldn't become another tragic statistic of the American healthcare system's failures. At the hospital, Rebecca was eating breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and though it was standard hospital food, it tasted like a feast because her body was so desperate for calories. A nutritionist had visited earlier that morning with a meal plan designed specifically for cancer patients undergoing treatment, along with samples of high-calorie supplements and a prescription for more. Dr. Patel stopped by mid-morning, her expression serious but not unkind. Rebecca, we need to have a frank conversation about what happens after you're discharged. I know. I need to eat more, take care of myself better. I understand. It's not just that. You physically cannot continue working at the diner. Your body can't handle it. Between the treatment and your current condition, you need rest, real rest, not just a few hours of sleep between shifts. But if I don't work, I can't pay rent. I can't buy food. I can't. There are programs, disability benefits, emergency assistance, the organizations that are already trying to help you. You need to let them. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I've never not worked. Since I was 16 years old, I've had a job. I've provided for myself. The idea of going on disability, accepting handouts, it feels like giving up. Dr. Patel pulled up a chair and sat down beside the bed. It's not giving up. It's strategic retreat. You're in a battle with cancer, Rebecca. Sometimes in battle, you have to fall back and regroup before you can advance again. This isn't permanent. It's tactical. The reframing helped. Rebecca had been thinking of acceptance as defeat, but Dr. Patel was right. This was strategic. This was smart warfare. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'll apply for disability. I'll accept the help. I'll do whatever it takes to beat this thing. Good. That's what I needed to hear. Dr. Patel made notes in Rebecca's chart. I'm going to keep you here for 2 more days. We need to get your strength up before discharge. Use this time to rest. Real rest. Not worry, not planning, just rest. Can you do that? Rebecca nodded, though she knew rest would be difficult with her mind racing through all the implications of her situation. But she would try. That afternoon, she received a surprising visitor. Daniel Fletcher from Walmart appeared in her doorway, holding a small bouquet of flowers and looking somewhat uncomfortable. Ms. Morrison, I'm Daniel Fletcher. I'm the manager at the Walmart where your daughter shops. I hope it's okay that I'm here. Jennifer Hayes gave me your room number. Of course. Please, come in. Rebecca was confused but touched by the visit. Daniel set the flowers on the bedside table and cleared his throat. I wanted to check on you and let you know about something. George Strait's foundation has been in touch with our corporate office. They're coordinating with several local organizations to put together a comprehensive support package for your family. I don't know all the details, but Jennifer wanted me to tell you that help is coming. Real help. Rebecca felt tears slip down her cheeks. Why? Why would George Strait's foundation help me? He met me once for 5 minutes in a grocery store. Because he saw something worth protecting, a mother doing everything possible for her child, and a child with the kind of character that doesn't happen by accident. You're raising someone special, Ms. Morrison. He recognized that. Daniel stayed for a few more minutes, making small talk and trying to lift Rebecca's spirits. Before leaving, he mentioned that the Walmart was holding the flexible position for her whenever she was ready to return to work. No pressure, no deadline. After he left, Rebecca lay in the quiet hospital room and let herself feel hope. Real, genuine hope that maybe the nightmare was approaching an end, that maybe George Strait had been right when he promised things would get better. At Patty's house, Lily was settling into a routine. Patty drove her to school in the morning, picked her up in the afternoon, and then they'd visit Rebecca at the hospital for an hour before returning home for dinner. It was structured and safe, and though Lily missed her mother desperately, she found comfort in the predictability. On the third day of Rebecca's hospitalization, Patty received a call from her son, the lawyer who had helped set up the Anonymous Assistance Fund. "Mom, I've been doing some research on the Morrison family's legal situation. The medical debt that's gone to collections. There are options: medical bankruptcy, debt forgiveness programs, settlement negotiations. I'd be willing to represent them pro bono if they're interested." "Bobby, that's wonderful, but we have to be careful about how we present this. Rebecca has a lot of pride." "I understand. Maybe frame it as a free legal consultation, see what I can do to help. I won't push anything she's not comfortable with." "That would be perfect. Thank you, sweetheart. You know, Mom, I'm proud of you. Dad would be too. You've really stepped up for this family." Patty felt warmth spread through her chest. "Your father always said the money was just a tool. I'm finally figuring out how to use it properly." The coordination of assistance was coming together like a complex puzzle, each piece fitting into place. Maria's nonprofit approved the $30,000 assistance package. Jennifer expedited Rebecca's disability application. Bobby Caldwell began the process of negotiating with the hospital's billing department. The food bank set up regular home deliveries. The church Patty attended organized a meal train for when Rebecca came home. It was overwhelming in its generosity, and when Jennifer sat down with Rebecca on her discharge day to explain everything that had been arranged, Rebecca couldn't speak for several minutes. She just cried. Deep, racking sobs of relief and gratitude and disbelief that people cared this much. "You're not alone," Jennifer said, holding Rebecca's hand. "You never were alone. You just didn't know where to look for help. Now you do. Now you have a whole community behind you." Rebecca and Lily returned to their apartment that evening, but it felt different now. The same water-stained ceiling, the same worn furniture, but the atmosphere had changed. There was food in the refrigerator, real food, healthy food. There was a schedule on the wall showing when volunteers would visit to help with cleaning, transportation, and errands. There was a phone list of people to call for different needs. Most importantly, there was hope. As Lily settled into her sleeping bag under her glow-in-the-dark stars, she looked up at her mother. "Mama, are we going to be okay now?" Rebecca smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "Yes, baby, I think we really are going to be okay."